Imagine waking up one morning and seeing a headline that changes everything you thought you knew about global tech power. China surges ahead in Maxwell's self-powered EV revolution, beating the US to it. At first, it sounds impossible, unbelievable, even exaggerated. But within hours, the story spreads worldwide. And by the end of the day, it's no longer a headline. It's a warning. Because what China just pulled off is more than a technological breakthrough. It's a geopolitical shift, a scientific upset, and a wake-up call for the United States, all happening at the same time. This is the moment the global race for energy independence changes direction, and China, not the US, is suddenly in front.
So, what exactly did they do?
How did they get their hands on self-powered EV tech rumored to originate from Maxwell Chikumbutso's radical energy inventions? And why are American carmakers calling private emergency meetings right now? Let's get into it. It started quietly, as all major geopolitical shocks do. Months back, Chinese engineers, backed by 3 state-funded research institutes, began secretly assembling a prototype vehicle. Not an ordinary EV, not a battery-extended hybrid. Something different. Something the American markets dismissed as impossible. A vehicle that charges itself. The first leak came from a blurry lab photo posted by an engineer who probably didn't understand the scale of what he had just shown the world. A compact power unit mounted inside the EV firewall, not connected to the grid, not dependent on charging stations, and reportedly capable of generating continuous electrical output. At first, the US responded with sarcasm. Fake. Impossible. Photoshopped. But then the footage dropped. A 51-minute test run inside a sealed facility. No external charging cables. No wall-mounted chargers. No solar arrays. Just the car running. For almost an hour straight, with the energy output rising instead of dropping. That's when everything changed. If the technology is real, and all signs now point to yes, this means China just demonstrated a system operating dangerously close to Maxwell Chikumbutso's long-claimed self-powered generator design. A system that mainstream scientists spent years calling pseudophysics, unverifiable, and even fantasy. But fantasy doesn't scare superpowers. Reality does. And China just made it real first. Inside Washington, the reaction was immediate. Several unnamed officials reportedly signed off on urgent assessments. Multiple American EV companies quietly reached out to former engineers and consultants connected to alternative energy research, the same people they once mocked. Meanwhile, in Beijing, the mood couldn't be more different. Officials are calling the new breakthrough the foundation of energy independence 2.0. State media has already hinted at mass-scale deployment in logistics fleets, drones, maritime transport, and their biggest target, consumer EVs. If China manages to mass-produce this before the US can replicate or block it, the global EV industry would be flipped upside down. Charging stations? Useless. Battery range anxiety?
Gone.
Lithium dependence? Reduced dramatically. And America knows this. Which is why Tesla, the company that built the world's most advanced EV ecosystem, is reportedly reevaluating its long-term technical strategy, as leaked internal memos indicate. But the deeper question remains. Where did China get the key principles for this system? Because many experts are noticing something uncanny. The power system diagram shown in the leaked footage looks shockingly similar to Maxwell Chikumbutso's early generator patents, especially the closed-loop electromagnetic cycling module. And that's where the story takes a dramatic turn, because a few months ago, something happened that almost everyone ignored. A discreet delegation of Chinese researchers traveled to southern Africa, visiting 3 tech hubs connected to Maxwell's early work. They met with engineers, bought old prototype parts, acquired discarded research papers, and even purchased equipment said to be remnants of Maxwell's abandoned workshops. At the time, nobody cared.
Now,
the puzzle pieces fit almost too perfectly. China didn't just surge ahead. They quietly rebuilt the foundation first. But here's the twist the world is not ready for. The real breakthrough isn't the EV. It's the hidden technology powering it, a compact RF-driven electromagnetic regeneration core that reportedly runs without traditional fuel, without external charging, and without degrading like lithium batteries. If this core is scalable, China could apply it to far more than cars.
Homes.
Factories, military drones, communication towers, cargo ships, high-speed trains, and if any of that happens before the US responds, America loses more than just the EV race. It loses its energy dominance. But the biggest shock is still coming because according to fresh leaks, China is already building a second prototype. And this one is far more advanced than anyone expected. Unlike the first model, the one leaked through lab footage, this new version is being developed inside a facility so secure that even Chinese staff are required to pass through multi-step biometric gates. Satellite images show the building was modified only 3 weeks ago. Additional shielding, new ventilation routes, and most alarming of all, an underground chamber added beneath the test bay. Why would they need an underground chamber for an EV? Because this new prototype isn't meant to prove the concept. It's meant to test limits. This model reportedly uses an expanded version of the RF regeneration core, one capable of producing nearly 4 times the electrical output of the first design. If true, that means China isn't thinking about simple consumer cars anymore. They're aiming at something much bigger. Large-scale transport systems, long-range surveillance drones, and potentially, although China denies it, military vehicles that never need refueling. Meanwhile, inside the United States, silence is turning into desperation. Multiple defense analysts have now confirmed that Washington has quietly launched its own internal investigation, not only into China's progress, but into how long the U.S. has fallen behind. According to an insider report from a senior engineer formerly involved in alternative energy testing, one private briefing included a chilling statement. If China perfects this technology before us, the energy balance of the 21st century shifts permanently. That's not an exaggeration. It's a strategic reality. This is why American automakers are scrambling for access to Maxwell Chikumbutso's early research papers, even the ones they previously dismissed as inconsistent science. Suddenly, those diagrams, those experimental coils, those strange circuit loops that engineers once laughed at, are being re-examined with a level of seriousness no one saw coming. But here's where things get even more interesting. Several African research groups, the same ones Maxwell collaborated with, are now receiving inquiries from both US and European companies. And while the world assumes China has already secured the advantage, these groups may hold pieces of the puzzle China doesn't yet have. Which raises the biggest question of all. If Maxwell's original concepts are the real key to self-powered energy systems, then who actually holds the most important missing piece? The US? China? Or Maxwell himself, somewhere quietly watching this global energy race unfold? Because just a few days ago, something unexpected happened. A confidential document leaked from a lab in Shenzhen that mentions a phrase never seen before in Chinese research: MSED-compatible module, Phase 2 integration. MSED, Maxwell's self-energizing device. The world may be looking at China's second prototype, but the truth is, China might already be working on something far more advanced, something directly tied to Maxwell's earliest breakthrough claims. And, according to one more leaked line from that same document, projected operational lifetime, continuous output, no external recharge. If that sentence is accurate, then China isn't just ahead. They're close to achieving the holy grail of energy technology. But there's one thing China didn't expect. And it's already happening quietly, strategically, and far closer than they realize. But the US's countermove isn't what anyone expected. It doesn't begin with a military lab. It doesn't start with a tech giant like Tesla or Lockheed. It starts in a place China would never think to look. A small, nearly forgotten government research facility in Nevada, one that was originally built for electromagnetic propulsion experiments back in the early 2000s. A project abandoned, funding cut, documents locked away. Until now. 2 weeks after the internal memo about China's MSED-compatible module leaked, this Nevada facility quietly activated for the first time in years. Security increased. New equipment shipped in unmarked crates. Contractors were flown in without being told why. And then, something even more suspicious happened. An aircraft registered to a private energy corporation, a company that has repeatedly shown interest in Maxwell Chikumbutso's inventions, landed at a restricted airstrip nearby. The flight records show one passenger whose name has been redacted. But the timestamps line up with something stunning. A sudden surge in electrical output detected by monitoring stations across central Nevada, a spike so unusual that for nearly 3 minutes, it triggered alerts normally reserved for electromagnetic anomalies. Whatever is happening inside that facility, it's connected to Maxwell's work. And it's happening fast. Meanwhile, China continues refining their second prototype. Shenzhen engineers have begun testing what they call hybrid resonant field stability, a phrase that appears nowhere in traditional EV design, but shows up multiple times in Maxwell's earliest notes. Which means one thing. China isn't just replicating his ideas. They're evolving them, simplifying the circuitry, reducing the material load, pushing efficiency into ranges scientists once called impossible. But even with all this progress, Beijing still faces one major obstacle, the same one Maxwell himself struggled with in the beginning: long-term stability under continuous load. If the core overheats even slightly, the regenerative loop collapses. China's first prototype barely held stable during tests. The second one, the underground model, is designed to solve this problem. But the Nevada anomaly suggests the US has already solved it, or is dangerously close. And because neither country trusts the other, something new has begun. A silent technological arms race, where neither side can afford to reveal their hand. Then comes a twist the world did not expect. A South African journalist, someone who has been quietly tracking Maxwell for years, publishes a claim that sends shockwaves across research communities. She says Maxwell recently visited a private research compound in an undisclosed African nation. No photos, no footage, no verification. But there is one detail that can't be ignored. Satellite imagery shows unusual electromagnetic disturbances near that compound on the exact day she claims Maxwell arrived. So now the world is facing a three-sided race. China with its near-complete prototypes. The US secretly reviving abandoned EM propulsion labs. And Maxwell possibly building something entirely new on his own soil. Something no one has seen yet. Something no one understands. Something powerful enough to tilt the balance back in Africa's favor. And if rumors are true, this new device isn't a car, a generator, or even a power core. It's something bigger. Something the world has no framework for. And the first hint of it emerges in a leaked line of encrypted communication intercepted between two Chinese engineers. The message about the array shakes intelligence analysts more than any prototype China has built. Because Maxwell never publicly mentioned an array. Not in interviews, not in patent drafts, not in early demonstrations. This means whatever he's working on now is something entirely new. And the timing couldn't be more suspicious. Just 48 hours after that encrypted message was intercepted, seismic sensors in the region detected a micro-vibration pattern, the kind typically associated with high-frequency magnetic field tests. Too precise to be natural, too clean to be industrial, and far too similar to the signatures recorded years ago when Maxwell conducted his earliest, small-scale free energy experiments. China notices it too. Internal documents from Shenzhen, leaked through a cybersecurity breach, show a message marked urgent priority sent to senior engineers. If Maxwell has begun constructing the array, Phase 3 must accelerate immediately. Phase 3. A stage no one outside China even knew existed. But what's even more telling is what they wrote next. Our resonance window is narrow. He must not activate first. This is no longer competition. It's a race against an unknown countdown, a silent deadline Maxwell seems to understand better than anyone. Then, unexpectedly, the US makes its first move. Late at night, the Nevada facility goes dark, not because of a shutdown, but because every single power reading vanishes. No output, no grid draw, no footprint. Yet satellites show the facility glowing faintly in infrared, the signature of a machine running at extreme efficiency, possibly generating its own power. Just like Maxwell's early MSED units. Engineers call it zero-trace mode. A machine running so cleanly it leaves almost no electrical fingerprint. And only one technology in the world resembles that description. But before analysts can speculate, something happens that blows the situation wide open. A drone, equipped with passive EM sensors, flies over the African compound where Maxwell was last seen. For most of the flight, it detects nothing unusual. Then, in less than a second, everything changes. A blinding burst of structured electromagnetic energy erupts from the ground, forming a symmetrical pattern in the air, a geometric pulse so perfect that researchers reviewing the footage pause the frame again and again. Not random noise. Not interference. Not a malfunction. A controlled frequency signature. A signature identical to Maxwell's earliest experiments, but magnified thousands of times. The drone's sensors overload, its cameras scramble, and seconds later, the craft falls out of the sky, not destroyed, but gently disabled, as if caught in a soft electromagnetic field. When the footage is recovered, analysts notice something chilling in the final intact frame. A faint, circular distortion on the ground. Massive.
Wide.
Perfectly symmetrical. The kind of structure you would build if you were creating an array. Not a generator. Not a propulsion unit. Something much larger. Something capable of generating a continent-scale energy field. And suddenly, everything becomes clear. China's prototypes. America's secret revival. The race to replicate MSED circuits. They're all preparing for the same moment. Because whatever Maxwell is building is not just another energy device. It's a threshold. A doorway into a level of power neither nation is ready for. And one thing is now unmistakable. Maxwell is no longer participating in the race. He's leading it. Intelligence agencies now realize something they should have seen much earlier. Maxwell isn't reacting to the race between China and the US. He's moving according to a plan that began long before either superpower took his technology seriously. And the array is the centerpiece. Satellite analysts trace the faint EM ring detected during the drone incident. When they outline it, the shape becomes clearer. A circular structure nearly a kilometer wide, perfectly aligned with magnetic north. This is no test field. No prototype. It's an activation platform. Across the globe, teams scramble to understand the pattern Maxwell is building, but they quickly discover something unnerving. The array's geometry matches a diagram found in Maxwell's earliest unpublished notes. A sketch drawn by hand. Half-erased equations around it. A single phrase written beneath. Global frequency synchronization. The meaning is unclear, but the implications are massive. Because while China and the US are racing to build self-powered cars and generators, Maxwell is preparing to synchronize something on a planetary scale. And then it gets stranger. In a leaked fragment of Chinese analysis, engineers highlight a specific line. If the array reaches resonance, all localized systems become obsolete. Localized systems, like individual cars, individual generators, individual batteries. In other words, if Maxwell finishes the array, the entire global energy architecture could shift from local generation to something new. A distributed, wireless, self-sustaining power field. A field you don't plug into. You simply exist within it. China panics first. They accelerate phase 3 operations, moving key components of their second prototype underground. A convoy of armored transports leaves Shenzhen under heavy escort. Satellite imagery shows one of the convoys carrying a cylindrical container more than 8 meters long, shielded internally with non-reflective alloys. Whatever is inside is not a car component. Meanwhile, in the US, the Nevada facility goes into full blink mode. Signals vanish. The building becomes invisible to radio scans. Backup generators around the region activate automatically, as if an enormous power suction occurred, but only for a moment. Then someone whispers the unthinkable. They're attempting a field bridge. A field bridge requires two things: a stable self-powered core, and something to lock onto. Something like Maxwell's array. But while the US prepares its bridge, Maxwell stays silent. No interviews. No appearances. No warnings. Until suddenly, and without explanation, 3 massive cargo containers arrive at the African compound. No markings. No customs trail. No documentation. Inside one container, a witness reports seeing a set of metal rods arranged in a spiraling formation, each one engraved with a pattern that looks like a cross between circuit lines and ancient symbols. It doesn't make sense until analysts realize the rods match the exact layout of Maxwell's earliest antenna experiments, scaled up to unimaginable size. This is the final stage of the array, a field amplifier, one capable of increasing resonance not by 2x, but by 100x. And right as tensions between China and the US reach boiling point, a new anomaly appears. A heartbeat-like pulse, a rhythmic electromagnetic signature, detected across 3 continents simultaneously. 3 pulses, each stronger than the last. And then a message appears on Maxwell's private frequency, encoded in subtle phase shifts. Alignment begins at 0.72 resonance. Prepare for transition. No country knows what that means. But one thing is certain. Maxwell is about to activate something the world has never seen. And both superpowers are running out of time to stop him or join him. Governments scramble to decode Maxwell's message. Alignment begins at 0.72 resonance. Prepare for transition. The numbers don't match any known EM phenomenon. Not solar cycles. Not Schumann frequencies. Not radio propagation patterns. But then a physicist inside the European Space Observatory notices something unnerving. 0.72 isn't a frequency. It's a ratio, one that appears when 2 oscillating fields begin syncing with a dominant external source. In other words, Maxwell isn't waiting for the world. The world is lagging behind Maxwell's field. And now it's catching up. China detects the first sign. Their underground prototype, the one moved secretly from Shenzhen, starts generating a faint harmonic vibration even while powered off. The engineers don't understand how, until they realize the core is resonating in sympathy with Maxwell's array. The US prototype in Nevada experiences the same thing. Instruments display an oscillation pattern identical to China's readings, despite the fact that both nations design their machines independently. Both cores are being pulled into alignment. This terrifies military command. Because if Maxwell can synchronize foreign systems without physical access, he isn't building an energy field. He's building control over all self-powered technologies on Earth. Washington orders a full-spectrum blackout of their core. China floods theirs with counterfrequencies to jam the resonance. Neither works. The cores continue syncing, and the pulses grow stronger. Pulse 4. Detected in the Indian Ocean. Intensity rising. Pulse 5. Recorded over South America. Phase aligned. Pulse 6. Global. Every sensitive EM detector on the planet registers it. Then something extraordinary happens. The sky over Maxwell's African compound flickers, just for a moment, as though the atmosphere bent, stretched, and snapped back. Witnesses describe a brief aurora-like shimmer, even though the location is nowhere near the poles. Satellite sensors record a vertical column of electromagnetic displacement, a perfect cylinder rising from the center of the array. A field pillar, the first of its kind. And the moment it appears, all 3 prototype cores, China's, the US's, and Maxwell's own, lock into perfect resonance. Globally synchronized. 0.72 has been reached. And then Maxwell finally breaks his silence. A short broadcast. Only 12 words. No anger. No threat. No announcement of dominance. Just a warning. Phase 2 begins soon. If you resist the field, you'll be left behind. No one understands what Phase 2 means. But the world is about to find out. The world freezes in uncertainty. Governments panic. Scientists argue. Militaries prepare for confrontation. But while the world debates, the field continues expanding. Maxwell's array stabilizes the pillar, sending low-frequency ripples across continents, harmless, yet unmistakably intentional. These pulses don't drain power grids, they stabilize them. They don't interfere with electronics, they refine them. Airports that were reporting navigation drift suddenly normalize. Remote villages experience a surge of wireless electricity. Regions previously crippled by blackouts see unexpected stability. For the first time, the world realizes. Maxwell wasn't preparing to dominate. He was preparing to activate. And Phase 2 wasn't a threat. It was the transition to a new energy architecture. Leaders eventually gather. China, the US, the African Union, the EU, not for war but for understanding. They arrive at Maxwell's compound expecting a supervillain. They find a man sitting calmly beside the humming core. He explains the truth. The field cannot be weaponized. It cannot be monopolized. And it cannot be shut down. Because it is distributed. Each core, Chinese, American, African, is a gateway. The more nations adopt it, the more stable and universal the field becomes. Energy isn't produced, it's harmonized. The planet itself becomes the generator. Maxwell stands before the world delegation and offers them a decision, the real reason he activated the resonance. You can embrace this, or cling to the old world. But understand this, the future doesn't wait. There is silence. Then, one by one, nations accept. They form the first global resonance coalition, agreeing to open source the field tech and build a wireless power grid that belongs to humanity, not corporations, not governments, not elites. The pillar slowly dissolves into the atmosphere as its energy stabilizes across the grid. Lights flicker, then brighten. For the first time in modern history, the world enters a new era without power plants, without fuel, without scarcity. A world where energy is not extracted, but shared. A world where innovation is not limited by resources, but imagination. As the camera pulls back from Earth, encircled by a faint, stable electromagnetic halo, Maxwell's final words echo. It was never about the technology. It was about giving the world a new beginning.